Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj ki Jai.
Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatham Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Bitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Vitam Sya Om Ajnanatimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhishtam Supurakam Garaganara Sisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Bhatanagam Govinda Bidam Ujwalam Bharatanam Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Bhande Vishwa Gurun Shah Divyad Bhagavat Premnawe Bija Pranam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Varanam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sareka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Banditam Shivadam Mareka Sharanam Nyashishwara Shridharam Vansha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahamaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gora Tavishe Namah. So we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Bhagawat by Srila Vrindaban Das Thakur. And this is a translation by Bengali Sarva Bhavana Prabhu. And this is Madhya-khanda, Chapter 4, The Unlimited Glories of Sri Nityananda. Unlimited Glories of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. All glories to Lord Gaurachandra, the life and soul of all the living entities. May my memory constantly embrace his lotus feet. Within his heart, Lord Nityananda was certain that Sri Vishvambar, who now stood before him, was none other than his beloved Supreme Lord. Overwhelmed with bliss, Lord Nityananda Prabhu was stunned in ecstasy. He stared unblinkingly at the beautiful face of the Lord. Upon seeing the bewilderingly beautiful form of the Lord, Nityananda wanted to taste the beauty with his tongue, drink the beauty with his eyes, embrace the beauty with his arms, and absorb the beauty with his nose. To everyone's astonishment, Lord Nityananda stood speechless, completely enchanted by the wondrous splendor of the Lord. Lord Gaurachandra is the supersoul within everyone's heart. Therefore he knew Lord Nityananda's heart. Thus Gaurachandra acted to reveal his hidden identity to Lord Nityananda and the depth of Nityananda's devotion to the Lord. Wearing a peacock feather ornament upon his head, flower blue karnikara on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and the Vaijayanti garland, Lord Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindaban, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. The Lord indicated to Srivas Pandit to recite a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srivas understood and immediately recited the shloka which describes the beauty of Krishna. At that time, Krishna entered the forest of Vrindavan dressed as the greatest of dancers. A peacock feather was threaded into his crown, and his ears were decorated with hanging blue karnikara flowers. His golden yellow dress glistened as he wore the effulgent Vaijayanti jewel around his neck. The land that carries the impressions of his lotus feet, the conch shell, disc, lotus and club is Vrindaban, his place of transcendental pastimes. To his lips he touched the flute, which filled with nectar as he played an enchanting melody. At the same time, his cowherd boyfriend sang of his beauty and glories. As soon as Nityananda Prabhu heard this verse, he fell down unconscious. As soon as Nityananda Prabhu heard this verse, he fell down unconscious. While Lord Nityananda lay in ecstatic bliss, Lord Chaitanya exhorted Srivas Pandit, recite more, recite more. After some time, Nityananda Prabhu regained his external consciousness and began crying tears of joy. The more he heard the verses, the more they increased his mad love for Krishna. His ecstatic roaring filled the universe and pierced through the covering of this material world. Lord Nityananda leaped up, and as he crashed down to the ground, everyone thought that the bones of his body were smashed. Seeing this, the Vaishnavas became very afraid and loudly uttered, "Krishna, please save him. Krishna, please save him." Lord Nityananda rolled on the ground, his body covered with tears of love. Long and recurrent sighs escaped his mouth as he looked deep into Lord Vishwambar's face. Lord Nityananda felt great ecstasy, and often he laughed aloud. Sometimes he jumped and danced. Sometimes he wrestled, and at other times he hung his head quietly. Lord Gaurachandra and all the devotees began to cry in joy, seeing such total absorption and madness in love of Krishna. It became impossible for the Vaishnavas to hold Nityananda Prabhu still. When the devotees failed, Lord Vishwambar held Nityananda Prabhu in an embrace. As soon as Chaitanya embraced Nityananda, Nityananda immediately became still. The Lord, to whom he was absolutely surrendered, now embraced him. Nityananda Prabhu allowed himself to be held without endeavor. Lord Chaitanya flooded Lord Nityananda with ecstatic tears of love. The arrow of ecstatic love of Krishna had afflicted Nityananda, and Chaitanya held him just as Ramachandra had held Lakshman when he lay unconscious, drained of all strength. Both Nityananda and Chaitanya wept, overwhelmed with joy. The intensity of love between Chaitanya and Nityananda can be properly described only by the example of the loving relationship between Ramachandra and Lakshman. When Nityananda came out of his ecstatic trance, all the devotees began loudly chanting Lord Hari's name. Vishwambar was embracing Nityananda, and Gadadhar Pandit smiled, thinking how their lordships' roles had been reversed. He thought Nityananda Prabhu as Anantasesha renders service to Lord Vishwambar by becoming the bed upon which Lord Nityananda always rests. However, today, he thought Nityananda Prabhu as Anantasesha renders service to Lord Vishwambar by becoming the bed upon which Lord Narayan always rests. However, today his pride as a servitor has been broken, and he lies in Vishwambar's embrace. Gadadhar Pandit was well aware of Nityananda's potencies, and the Supreme Lord Nityananda Prabhu knew the innermost thoughts of Gadadhar Pandit. All the devotees were jubilant upon meeting Lord Nityananda, and their minds were steeped in thoughts of him. The ecstasy that Vishwambar and Nityananda experienced in their meetings is impossible to portray through words, but it found expression in the continuous tears of joy from their eyes that drenched the earth. Lord Vishwambar said, "This is the most glorious day in my life. Today I have seen the embodiment of loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, the essence of the four Vedas. Only the Supreme Lord himself can manifest such intense ecstasy. The fortunate souls who were able to see his loving devotion will never be rejected by Lord Krishna. Now I understand that you, Lord Nityananda, are the full-fledged manifestation of the Lord's energy. You are non-different from him. The living entities can obtain loving devotional service at the lotus feet of Krishna simply by worshiping you. You purify the entire cosmic manifestation, and your transcendental nature is inconceivable, incomprehensible, and esoteric. You are the personification of the highest ecstatic love of Krishna. Even a moment's association with you can dissolve millions and millions of sins. I can now understand that Lord Krishna intends to purify and redeem me as he is giving me your association. It is my great fortune that I am able to see your lotus feet. I know that if I worship your lotus feet, then I will surely receive love of Krishna. Unaware of the passing of time, Gaurasundar was absorbed in glorifying Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda and Chaitanya had infinite exchanges, but they were very confidential, so they conversed in gestures and signals that were known only to themselves. The Lord then asked Nityananda Prabhu, "I'm hesitant to ask you from which direction you have come." Lord Nityananda was always absorbed, and he spoke like an innocent, restless child. He understood that Lord Chaitanya had descended to this material world. Thus, when he replied, he did so with folded hands and great humility. He had felt very ashamed and shy when Lord Vishwambar was glorifying him, and through gestures, words, and indications, he explained everything in detail. Lord Nityananda Prabhu said, "I extensively toured all places of pilgrimage, but I could see only the place and not Krishna, the Supreme Lord. I asked some good people why their altars were standing empty. I do not see him in his own place. I said, 'Where is Krishna? Where did he go?' They all replied, 'Krishna has gone to Gaudadesh, Bengal. He was in Gaya recently, and not so long ago he returned to Bengal. When I came to Nadia, I was greeted by jubilant chanting of the Lord's holy name, and someone told me that Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has appeared here. I have heard that in Nadia, even the most wretched fallen souls could get liberation. Thus, being such an abominable wretch, I have come here." Lord Vishwambar replied, "We are most fortunate that a devotee such as yourself is amongst us now. Moreover, we are very grateful to the Lord that today we have seen your ecstatic tears of love of Krishna." Murari Gupta smiled and said, "We cannot enter the confidential discussions between Nityananda and Vishwambar." Srivas Pandit said, "How can we understand? Their intimate exchanges are just like Lord Hari's with Lord Shiva." Gadadhar Pandit said, "You are quite right, O Pandit. They seem to be exactly like Ramachandra and Lakshman." Another Vaishnava said, "They look as if they are two cupids." Someone else said, "They are Balaram and Krishna." Another said, "I don't have much knowledge, but from what I have seen, it appears that Krishna has taken Ananta Sage in his arms." Someone else commented, "They are like two friends. Their loving, affectionate exchange is just like the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna." Others were saying, "They seem to know each other very intimately, and thus can converse with words and gestures that they alone can understand." Thus the devotees express their joy at having Lord Nityananda amongst them, giving their different opinions. Anyone who hears about the meeting of Nityananda and Gaurachandra is surely freed from material bondage. Lord Nityananda Prabhu serves Lord Chaitanya in every way, as a friend, as his umbrella, his bed, or as his carrier. Lord Nityananda alone can render all these services. He serves Lord Chaitanya in multifarious ways according to his own sweet will. Others can also become eligible to serve the Lord, but only by the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu. Lord Nityananda Prabhu's glories are unlimited. No one can fully know him. Even Sri Mahadev, who is the greatest yogi, a pure devotee and himself a controller in this material energy, cannot fully fathom the limits of Lord Nityananda's transcendental nature. If one criticizes or offends Nityananda Prabhu, not knowing his sublime transcendental attributes, then although one is constitutionally an eternal servant of Krishna, one becomes forever rejected from the path of devotional service to Sri Vishnu. Lord Nityananda is the object of Lord Chaitanya's complete love, and my heart's desire is that Lord Nityananda will reside in my heart as my beloved Lord and Master. By his grace, I have developed attachment and attraction for Lord Chaitanya. It is by his order that I write these wonderful pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Just as Raghunath and Yadunath are different names for the same person, similarly, the names Nityananda and Baladev indicate the same person. One who desires to cross over this ocean of nescience and drown in the nectarian ambrosia of Krishna Prem must take shelter at the lotus feet of Nitai Chandra. Whoever attentively glorifies these wonderful pastimes will be blessed by Sri Vishwambar along with all his associates. The name of Sri Vishwambar is extremely rare and precious in this world and indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the life and soul of everyone's transcendental love. Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Sri Nityananda Prabhu are my life and soul. I, Vrindaban Das, humbly offer this song at their lotus feet.
Wow, so beautiful.
Maybe we can read a little of the next chapter. This is Madhya-khanda, chapter 5, the Vyasa-Puja of Sri Nityananda. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Chandra, who is praised by the name of Murari. He is the constantly glowing lamp of Navadip. He is the fearless lion who has come to slay the atheistic elephants. He has taken the knotted thread in order to demonstrate the necessity of regularly chanting a specific number of times the Lord's holy names, Hare Krishna, which are his own names. So that knotted thread refers to chanting of japa. They have a knotted thread. Yeah. We're using Tulsi Mala. They used.
Mahaprabhu had like a thread, a rope that he tied.
Yeah.
We heard that, yeah.
All glories to Sri Vishwambar, the Supreme Lord of all living entities. He is the Lord and Master of Sri Nityananda and Gadadhar Pandit. All glories to the Lord, for he is subjugated by the love of his pure devotees, headed by Sri Advaitacharya Prabhu. O Lord, please engage the conditioned living entities in the eternal loving service of Lord Krishna and release them from the bondage of material existence. In the association of Nityananda, all the devotees pass their time in great joy discussing the topics of Krishna's pastimes. All the assembled Vaishnavas were very elevated souls and unalloyed devotees of the Lord. They became immersed in the nectar of Krishna consciousness. Nityananda Prabhu was extremely joyful, and he smiled as he looked around at the Vaishnavas. The meetings were always a scene of extreme ecstasy, and tears of transcendental love and happiness cascaded down from everyone's eyes. Seeing this ecstasy, Lord Vishwambar spoke to Lord Nityananda Prabhu. Listen, my dear Nityananda Goswami, where shall we hold your Vyasa-Puja ceremony? Tomorrow is a full moon, and on this day Srila Vyasadeva is worshipped. Therefore, you may choose anyone's house and make arrangements with him. Nityananda Prabhu could understand Lord Vishwambar's mind, so he took Srivas Pandit by his hand and smiling said, Listen, Vishwambar, I will have my Vyasa-Puja in this Brahman's house. Lord Vishwambar then spoke to Srivas Pandit. Now you have a heavy responsibility over your head. Srivas replied, No, my lord, this is no botheration. By your grace, everything is in this house. The paraphernalia required, like clothes, grains, Brahman thread, ghee, etc., are all available here. I have only to borrow the book, which gives the procedure for performing a Vyasa-Puja ceremony. Then tomorrow, by my great fortune, I shall witness the Vyasa-Puja. Lord Vishwambar was very pleased with Srivas' reply, and all the devotees were jubilant. Lord Vishwambar said, Listen, Nityananda Gosai, let us all make preparations to go to Srivas Pandit's house. Nityananda very much appreciated Vishwambar's words and immediately proceeded to Srivas Pandit's house. The Lord and Nityananda Prabhu, accompanied by their associates, looked exactly like Krishna and Balaram in Gokula as they went about accompanied by their friends. As they entered Srivas Pandit's house, the devotees felt a current of joy run through their bodies. The Lord ordered the doors to be closed, allowing only friends and relatives inside. Then, upon the signal from Lord Vishwambar, they began singing bhajans and kirtans, and gradually the external world faded into oblivion. The chanting was ecstatic and befitting the occasion of Vyasa-Puja. The two lords began to dance ecstatically, surrounded by the devotees who were singing. The bond of love and affection exists eternally between Lord Nityananda and Lord Vishwambar. And now as they danced together, each one was immersed in thought of the other. The devotees were experiencing extraordinary joy. Some began to roar loudly. Some fell unconscious, and others could not restrain the flow of joyful tears. The two lords were experiencing all the symptoms of ecstasy like shivering, pallor, horripilation, crying, and falling unconscious. Who can describe all the ecstatic symptoms that they manifested? So horripilation refers to standing of the hairs on end. The two lords danced, lost in their ecstasy. Often they would embrace each other crying. In the mood of brotherly love, they tried to catch each other's feet. However, because both were wary and cunning, they could not succeed. They were overwhelmed in happiness, and they rolled on the ground, forgetting their absolute supreme position. Such are their wonderful pastimes. The world of external phenomena was forgotten, and their clothes fell from their bodies. They could not sit still, and even though the Vaishnavas tried to hold them down, they were unsuccessful. How would it be possible for the Vaishnavas to restrain the personalities who support the entire universe? The two Supreme Lords were lost in the nectar of chanting and dancing. Lord Gaurasundar kept repeating, chant, chant, drenching his whole body with tears of happiness. The Lord, having found the personality whose association he had always desired, his eternal brother, Lord Nityananda, was floating on an ocean of eternal, ever-increasing ecstasy. Lord Vishwambar's dancing was completely enchanting, and sometimes he would touch his head with his feet. When Lord Nityananda Prabhu danced, there seemed to be an earthquake. Thus the two Supreme Lords danced in ecstasy. Who can describe that scene of great jubilation? Lord Vishwambar then sat upon the seat of Lord Vishnu, becoming absorbed in the mood of Lord Balaram. Like Lord Balaram, he expressed madness and repeatedly cried out, "Bring me wine, bring me wine." And this wine refers to Ananda. So, to Nityananda Prabhu, the Lord said, "Immediately bring me a plow." At the Lord's request, Lord Nityananda stretched out his hands, and Lord Gaurachandra received the plow with his hands. Some saw the two lords go through the motions empty-handed, while others actually saw Lord Nityananda give a plow to Lord Chaitanya. Only by the Lord's mercy can one understand his supreme position. Such confidential pastimes and topics of the Lord as displayed by Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are known to only a very limited few. Receiving the plow from Nityananda Prabhu, Lord Chaitanya now began to ask for wine, acting agitated and mad. Most of the devotees could not understand this mood of Lord Chaitanya. They looked into each other's faces in bewilderment, wondering why the Lord was asking for wine. After careful consideration, they brought a pot of Ganga water to the Lord. The Lord distributed the Ganga water to everyone, and drank much of it himself, taking it to be real wine. All around. So this reminds me of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's description of the how Gadadhar Pandit was reading to Mahaprabhu at the temple of Tota Gopinath. And there it describes that the Lord, Mahaprabhu, was feeling a form of, we can say almost like a form of madness, because he was feeling separate. He's internally Krishna, but he's covered with the bhavakanti, or the mood and the beauty of Srimati Radharani. And it's hard to understand, but he was actually feeling great separation from himself. And when a person is deeply in a mood of great anguish, they sometimes, to relieve their suffering, take some form of intoxication. But in this case, the intoxication that was being supplied by Gadadhar Pandit was the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. And as he read, the tears would flow from his eyes and fall to the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam like offerings of flowers. So there, Guru Maharaj talks about this mood of intense separation and intense, that separation is described as being like the poison of the cobra, but at the same time, like also the nectar, like the happiness of pouring nectar upon one's head. So it's simultaneously poisonous and also nectarian. So in that sense, when we hear about the bring me wine, well, this is something reference to the mood of Sri Balaram, because it's talking about Mahaprabhu asking for the plow, and that's Haladar, that's Balaram. And the wine, we see sometimes in the pastimes of Lord Balaram, he's drinking like Varuni beverage. So of course, Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, when they're referring, bring me wine, that is referring to the mood of Sri Balaram. He's saying, first he said, give me a plow, that's Haladar, his plow. And then he's saying, give me wine, and it's referring to the mood of Balaram. But also Srila Sridhar Maharaj has said, what is that verse, you know, that about Nityananda Prabhu? No, it's where it says that even if I see Lord Nityananda Prabhu, how does that verse go? He goes,
even if you see him with the wine bottle in one hand and the prostitute in the other,
or
and Brahma with his four heads will give full dandana. That's
yeah,
the verse.
yeah. I think he says with his hand around a Malecha girl and a bottle of wine in his hand, or even going into a tavern or something, that still he will always be the worshipable Lord of my heart. So the idea is that you cannot judge or understand Nityananda Prabhu by any kind of external appearance, because he is avadut. He is avadut. He is above and beyond all apparent social conventions. But Mahaprabhu, in other pastimes where some sadhu suggested about drinking wine, Mahaprabhu would jump into the Ganga could not even tolerate that thought. So here, what we're hearing about in Bring Me Wine, this is just basically what this is a reference to Nityananda Prabhu being non-different from Balaram. And that Bring Me Wine is referring to the Varuni pastimes of Lord Baladev. He is... So, Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Charavaya Nama Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Charavaya Nama Charavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Charavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Ram Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Maranamon Giridhari Gopinath Maranamon Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Janardan Seva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Janardan Seva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanata Bhakta Raguna Jai Rupa Sanata Bhakta Raguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Dasa Raguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Dasa Raguna H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jaoite Vignana Shavista Puran Jaoite Vignana Shavista Puran H.I. Gosai Jar Muhitananda H.I. Gosai Jar Muhitananda Kasabar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras Kasabar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras Dare Janana Sevi Bhattasani Mas Dare Janana Sevi Bhattasani Mas Janame Janame More Amilas Janame Janame More Amilas H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindaban Anande Bolo Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Charyashta Tara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Charyashta Tara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Bharga Ki Jai. Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Premsigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Srila Vrindaban Das Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Bhagawat Ki Jai. Narottam Srinivas Shamananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Vishwavaranya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Ram Mayapur Ki Jai. Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saparshada Shri Manmaha Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Koladvip Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Soquel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ashram Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Vrindaban Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Ju Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Shri Vishaka Devi Dasi Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj Ki Jai.